If you just had no engineering skills and you were writing these little contracts, and what you were building was highly sensitive to being architected the right way, like if you tried to build Twitter, go back to Twitter, which we all know and know as engineers. If you tried to build Twitter in this way and you had no ideas about, you weren't engaging or dictating at all in these contracts how you wanted the architecture to be done, you'd be in trouble. But how much of my time and how much of my skill has it taken to kind of maintain a reasonable architecture with the stuff that we've built? It's really not that hard.
So
most of these projects don't take that much architecture.
Instead of putting something like, I want a site that sells bunnies with a share button on it, and sending it out as a contract, you put something like, I want a form that is validated with a button.
Yeah, the first contract on the Love Machine, which was this commercial app we built that was the thing that we had originated inside Linden Lab, was a contract I wrote where I said, I want a form that posts to a database with the following, in MySQL, with the following, rough schema. Give me back this form, and somebody did that for me in a couple hours, and I had that. And then we just built the whole thing on top of that. We've done everything like that. It's exactly what you said. Start with a login page. Start with a settings page. Get the home screen up as a framework that just has a skeletal data display that's live, and then deploy it, and have everybody that's working on it just sitting there using it. That's the other thing. I'm not a big believer in multiple staging systems, because you want to have everybody literally just sitting there in the project. The other key thing we built, which is part of the work list, if you go check it out, is this thing called the Journal, which is basically IRC. It's a very capable live chat environment that's constantly telling everybody that's sitting in the chat environment what builds are happening, who's working on what, when people get paid. There's all kinds of, if we had hours, I could talk about all the psychological motivations of this stuff. We have a bonus system where I can kind of anonymously give you a bonus as a developer, and it literally says, Philip received a $100 bonus in this chat system. So you see that pop up. Everybody else can see that. So there's all kinds of fascinating things you can do if you bring the transparency up, put everybody together in a shared space, and then break the project up into very small pieces.
Cool. Let's open it up. We have about 10 minutes to questions from you guys. I'm sure you guys.
Well, what was built in this system? Well, did you build the work list itself?
Yes. So the work list itself was built using this system. We built the Love Machine, which is an internal messaging system for companies. It's kind of a multi-tenant infrastructure on EC2 where you essentially deploy an instance of this messaging system where you can send each other these short messages of recognition inside a company, and you get things like tools like word clouds that show you what everybody's saying about each other in your company. Very, very interesting stuff like that. That was an app. The work list itself, which has SMS, payment systems built into it, all kinds of interesting search and form displays on it. We've built several iPhone apps using this approach. We're currently using Titanium as a framework for doing the iPhone apps, iPhone and Android apps. We've built a few kind of back-end, like we built our own word cloud at one point because we wanted a word cloud tool that did 2D physics, and we've been able to build a lot of different things with it. Again, I said we spent about $500,000 in development time. We've spent that money on probably about 120 different developers around the world, developers, testers, program managers. We do program management in a very similar way. So you can literally have somebody who's looking after the contracts that I'm writing. We have a person, we have one primary person given our scale that does this, who's checking. He's in Belgium, and he's literally constantly doing the program management. Did this check-in? Did it match the spec that Philip wrote? Does it work? Did the final commit actually get pushed, and does it look right? Again, all that stuff, he literally does that, and then adds a fee, which everybody else in our community can see him add, to the project that's saying, pay me, this is what you owe me for that work. So he's regulating. This idea of people regulating their own pay in a kind of a shared environment where everybody can see what everybody else is making is very, very interesting as a different model for managing people's behavior, basically. Yes.
So do people bid on these contracts, or do you have sort of set, not employees, but set people that you're always working with?
Both. So as a developer, if I put a project in that might say something like, I just did this, send a message when a new user signs up to our chat system so everybody in the system can see that a new user signed up. So I'll write a contract like that that was basically a couple paragraphs of that description. You get bids on it. I get SMSs telling me literally while I'm driving down here, telling me what the bids are. And then I accept one of those bids based on my assessment of obviously cost, but also is it the right developer for the job. If it's somebody new, I might ask myself, is this really hard? Like if you're brand new, are you going to get into it and just get chewed up by how difficult a project it is? On things like program management, code review, those things are fees that we just ask people to just be wise. And that's where we take advantage of the fact that everybody can see what everybody else is doing. And we just say, just add a fee that you think is appropriate for your time to this. But know that everybody can see this, and obviously if you're not adding fees in a way that's sane, we're not going to keep calling on you to do that work. But you're right, I mean, we do both things. We just trust people to pick the numbers.
So how much visibility do you give folks, whether they're engineering or program management, into the components they're going to be working on? What I mean by that is, like, someone goes to Linden Lab team and says, okay, this is the component I'm going to work on. For a new entrepreneur who's starting mybunnystore.com, right? How do you compel and attract talent to work on those specific components if you're trying to adhere to this kind of model, right? If you're standing up your kind of new hot sexy thing.
Yeah.
It's easier for more established, more renowned projects, right? So what would you say to folks who are trying to adhere to the same model?
Well, I think the appeal, and I'm not sure, let me try and answer that and see if I'm answering it right. The appeal of this kind of a granular contract type development system, really it doesn't really matter what kind of project you're working on. The appeal is it's really easy to get in, do something as a developer, get paid for it, like code reviews. I mean, anybody here that's a developer that's under the right conditions, you feel like coming and doing code reviews for us, please do. It's a great way to make extra money. We pay you with PayPal every time each one of these little jobs is complete, which is, a bunch of times a day that they roll through. So I think the appeal of it is also just functional in that it's easy to do. Yeah, and I'm not really worried actually about recruiting people, but I do think, and I hope this is maybe answering this a little bit. I do think the other thing that happens that's really healthy is you see people move around their efforts according to whether something really is useful or good. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you'll put a feature idea in and nobody bids on it. And in part it's because as we are all communal animals. And when you're a part of a project like this, regardless of whether you have stock options or how you're paid or whatever, you feel a sense of ownership and of protection and nurturing of the thing you're building. And so it's really interesting. Like a lot of times I've been so humbled as a designer, right? And designers need humbling, right? That I'll write some feature idea, right? And it's just no bids. Crickets. I mean, 2 days will go by. And I'm just like, I'll just turn to my partners and be like, well, I think we know about that idea now. Whereas in a conventional organization, that sucker would get built, and it would suck,
What about, this is all very focused on engineering. I'm more of a community manager, people person, communicator. What do you do with people like me? Do you help them on your team? Like, where do
We've
they
run
fit?
contracts around things like communicate with new users that are coming in. I think it's pretty amenable to that. I mean, whenever you've got a well-described task and a well-described expected outcome, I'd like you to talk to the last 10 people that signed up for the Love Machine and see how they're doing. You can write a contract around that. It works. I don't think that we have as much road time, as much test experience with that. I'm always respectful of, there are a lot of different pieces of a real business, and I'm not certain that every one of them can be automated necessarily using an approach like the work list. But I do think that things like that can actually. I do think that customer support, community management, different types of outreach, evangelism, and sales can be managed with this type of a system. I don't necessarily believe that everything can. Like I said, I don't think that vision is crowdsourced in most cases. There can be aspects of it that are, but you still have great leaders. In a way, systems like this that are more market-based are harder core, make it more obvious who the real leaders are, right? And that's, I think you were mentioning that in the write-up to this, that I was also very passionate about teasing out what the aspects of real leadership are and then measuring them, rather than having most of leadership be management. be sort of human performance management, which again has its place, but I don't think we need to do as much of it nowadays as we used to need to do. We all like our jobs a little more. There are many, many wonderful, transparent ways of assessing performance that we should avail ourselves of as business operators. And then once you take away some of those management process stuff that you used to be doing, you then get to ask the question, well, like, are you an effective leader? And I think that is a very important question, and one that should be, the leaders of organizations should be scrutinized in the same means that these sort of transparent peer review and payment mechanisms should be.
We'll do one more, and then that one, and then people can questions after.
Yeah, so actually it's a two-part question. The first one's really simple. I'm wondering how you're handling taxation for the payments you're doing, like you're sending 1099s out. And then the second kind of like bigger question is, I appreciate, Phil, how like you've been more descriptive than prescriptive so far, and I think I hear in that like humility. But if we push you to give us some advice based on your experience, would you push people doing new ventures right now to do the same kinds of things you're doing across the board, or if not, like what would you say we should think about as we evaluate whether to do some of these techniques?
So the simple answer to the first question is yes, we do 1099 people. So we keep track of that and we kind of do it. That's obviously an ongoing interesting question as to what the right treatment is and all that. But yeah, as it stands today, if you pay somebody a couple $1,000s, you need to report it. The second issue, what's my advice to people? I think that it's possible to reduce the cost of developing ideas and increase the speed, enjoyment, empowerment associated with it significantly enough that I would suggest that people that are thinking about kind of early stage new ideas in potentially competitive, sort of fast-moving environments, to at least think about these strategies, because I think what these strategies do is they really just reduce risk. Like I was saying, the Cricket's experience of having nobody bid on something, that's a great risk reduction for us as a company, for me to get that feedback that quickly. And that's going to translate into a competitive advantage if I'm going up against somebody else's team, and I'm trying to build, like I am right now in several different ways, a new product, and I'm up against another team. I think we'll win, because we'll just move so much faster, because we're so agile and we have such lower ego. We just have to back out of stuff that's the wrong direction. So I guess it's like, so again, I think if you're doing something novel, you're kind of starting from 0 lines of code. And of course, I can't help but do this a bit as a salesperson, because as an inventor of this type of process, I really want to see it work with other projects. And one of the things we're doing, and I, again, absolutely welcome participation and involvement here from people, is I'm especially with a group of designers and engineers like this, we're just starting to run other projects in this system, and we'd love to have you and your projects come to us or come to me, and we'll give it a try. So what I would say is, if somebody is contemplating doing something where they're basically starting from scratch right now, and they're going to design an idea from the ground up, boy, come and talk to me, because this kind of an approach is fascinating. Whether you build your own system that does what we do or you use our software, I don't care. I'm more interested in continued validation that this kind of an approach to product building is going to be better in the future.
Let's thank Phil for coming out for an awesome talk. And any of you that have to go ahead and leave. And some of you that had questions, go ahead and stay and ask questions. So.
How about intellectual property? So how do you protect yourself?
Yeah, you basically, so with respect to intellectual property, you click through, in a manner similar to what you do with a contracting system. You have all the people that are doing work for you click on something that says, I'm bringing it to you and it's IP clear. I would say with respect to people accidentally or intentionally putting stuff that's copywritten in a way that doesn't match your model or came from somewhere else, the only thing I would say about that is I was running a company of 250 people. That happens in a regular company too. So I'm not sure that it happens less. It might even happen less in a contract-based environment. You know what I mean?
But people know your code. And how do you protect? How do
I protect my IP?
Yeah.
Great. Let me answer that question. I don't care. I think that for a lot of startup ideas, the implementation and in fact knowledge of the strategy is really not a significant competitive advantage, and it's not so significant an advantage as you get from being open with the idea. Now, I'm not the first person to say that, but I would say that, boy, do I think that's true. I just think that now there are things like chip design.